Everybody wants to know what's the better investment, development or value add? Well, let's talk about the difference between the two, and we'll get into that and you can judge for yourself. You know, development is an interesting animal because you're creating the original value add. You're taking raw sticks and stones and you're creating something that is valuable, but then you're adding the tenancy and you're taking it to a whole new level. My name is Shannon Robnett. I've been doing this for 27 years and it's one of the most lucrative things you can do in the investment space. But it's definitely not the only thing. And a lot of people have ideas that they follow about whether or not pre-existing value add deals are better than development. And when you're looking at how to develop a property, you're really taking raw land, you're taking a city that needs the units, you're taking something and creating something from nothing. And there's a whole lot of value and satisfaction in doing that process and coming up with something that is truly unique and valuable to the market. What a lot of people fail to understand is that the time that it takes, the amount of effort that it takes. It's like pushing a boulder uphill, but the value that you can create is unlike anything else out there. The easy thing to do is to look at a value add. You can take something that's already existing, you can get financing on it, you're able to go to the bank and say, this is how it's doing now, this is my business plan to expand, to improve, to renovate and refinish, and this is what we're going to have at the end. And there's risk involved with that, but it's a lot less. And there's the ability to do that time and time and time and time again in the same time frame it takes to do development. So the real question is, what do you want to do? The thing you need to do is figure out something and get really good at it before you start doing some development, some value add, some of this, maybe look at mobile home parks, and then the next thing you know, you've got a diverse portfolio where nothing is congruent and none of your systems cross-collateralized. So you're constantly having to find people that fill a very specific niche. But what are the things that make development special? There's the potential for higher returns. There's tax incentives with financing that you can get. There's tax incentives with a 45L program that allows for deductions for developers. There's the appreciation on adding the value to the land by taking it from an unincorporated part of a city or a county and bringing it in, bringing services, sewer and water, adding tax base to it, and then creating value with that. There's also being in strategic locations. There's a lot of pockets in large cities that have all grown around it, and for one reason, Mr. Smith has never sold, but now his heirs want to, and there's the opportunity to add value in very key locations in a city. The other reality is a newly built product usually comes with a manufacturer and a subcontractor warranty, and there's by far less maintenance. For example, most people figure in about a 44% expense ratio on an older product. We're consistently running brand new product that we build at about a 29% expense ratio. This translates to a whole lot better NOI. It's just, are you willing to put in the work? But let's talk about what's special about value add. There's the potential to manage multiple sites with the same amount of manpower and effort. There's the potential to renovate and create something different and stand out from your competitors. But there's also the ability to raise rents, the ability to improve units, the ability to get involved in government programs that will allow specific tax benefits that happen on these particular types of units. So while you can de-risk the situation, you still have the opportunity to create some upside. Again, it just comes down to what you want. Now let's talk about the pitfalls. Let's talk about all the things that can go wrong. We just came through COVID. I'll tell you a little story. When I was doing the apartment complex that we're currently finishing, we had 190 units. My lumber bid was about $7 million. If you guys remember, at that time, lumber went from about $600 a thousand clear up to $1,700 a thousand, which means that my $7 million lumber bid more than doubled. The problem with that was I didn't have enough contingency in my whole budget to cover my lumber. So I bought lumber at $1,100. Redid my pro forma, figured things out, made some exceptions, did some things different, and was able to figure out how to cover that cost. Then lumber did something that was amazing. There were several other factors happening that were delaying the project, so I decided to sell that lumber package at $1,700. Now when lumber prices fell back down, we had the project on the back burner. We were able to buy back in at about $1,000. So we were able to apply the profit, cover the balance that we were over on our budgets, and create a win-win for everybody by delaying and realizing that profitability can be had in situations all along the way. I know of a lot of people that didn't do that thing, didn't see the value in that, bought in and paid the price. Now, delivering those units probably was still profitable, but it sure put a pinch in their budgets. And if you have incomplete budgets, you're constantly running into cost overruns, you're running into things that are taking longer, there's delays in supplies, all of those things can cause you issues. So procurement is incredibly important. Timeline and budget is incredibly important. Making sure that you have the ability and the right staff and the right companies involved, because it's not always low bid that's going to get you done on time, especially when you're staring down an interest payment that's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Here's another thing that people always look at when they're doing development. They look at just any piece of ground. You need to be strategic when you're selecting your location. You need to be setting yourself up to be in a high demand area with a low inventory of product. You don't want to be building an apartment complex next to 7 other apartment complexes that are also under construction. That's going to put you in a very competitive market that's going to hurt you when it comes to lease up. There's always going to be tons of competition in your area. And while we see McDonald's go right next to Wendy's, go right next to Burger King and Dairy Queen and Chick-fil-A, they all tend to congregate in one area. That's not the same for apartments. You don't want to be right next door to your neighbor, because not everybody's going to the same place for work or coming to the same area to do that activity. And so you want to be selective. You want to make sure that you are able to find a position in the market that almost guarantees your success with the surrounding area, the schools, the amenities that are in the area, the city services, all of those kinds of things are going to contribute to your success. Now, here's some things that investors need to look for when getting involved with a syndication that involves development. Number one, you've got to look at the track record of the syndicator. You've got to look at the budgets and the timelines and see what that's deliverable at. You also need to look at the underwriting, because the window is much longer. You're facing something that can be 36 to 48 months versus something that can be on track and delivered per the business plan in 12 months or less. And so you're along for a longer ride without returns and without very many checkpoints in between. So you're really going to want to make sure that you vet your development team strongly and that you go deep on the underwriting. You're going to want to make sure that you look at whether or not you're anticipating cash flow during that time period, because most development deals don't provide cash flow during the build period, because really that's just borrowing more interest to pay interest to someone else when there's no rents coming in. And the whole goal is to build it, fill it, stabilize it with collected rents to offset that payment at the end, not to borrow more money, increase your cost of capital just so that you can pay out monthly dividends. So if you're looking for cash flow, don't look at development. You also want to make sure that before you get involved in the investment of a syndication that involves development, you're going to want to make sure that all the city approval processes are done. You're going to want to make sure that plans have been submitted to the building department, because all of these things can cause massive delays if errors are found or if additional steps need to be taken. And cities and states and counties are notorious for saying, well, thank you for doing that process, but don't forget about this one. And making sure that you're ready to go, shovel ready is the term, making sure that your project is shovel ready before you invest is key to making sure that you're getting the maximum return in the shortest period of time. So guys, those are my thoughts on why development is still a viable option and still is incredibly powerful tool for you gaining appreciation of your real estate investment money.